Can you explain what you're doing in this photo?
That's not me.
That's not you?
Nope.
In the immortal but very memorable words from R. Lee Ermey's character in Full Metal Jacket, what is that? What the f is that? Clearly, whether it be with the promo shots or having him in hand, we have no idea exactly, rhetorically speaking, what McFarlane Toys was thinking when creating the supposed, allegedly, Ben Affleck Batman figure from the Flash movie Wave. I say rhetorically because we can all kind of generate our theories, one very strong one over the others, as to why it is that this is probably the most polarizing, to put it mildly, McFarlane Toys figure in quite some time. Not just for the Flash movie Wave, but for Batman figures, period. I would even give it the benefit of the doubt and say for at least 2023. We probably had some other questionable entries in the collection from past years ever since the acquirement of the license in 2020, or at least their momentum picking up in 2020. But this is probably taking the cake, quite frankly, because there's just so many things that are just going into different directions for a Batman figure. And let's get the easy target out of the way. No, this does not look like Ben Affleck, or at least the Ben Affleck version of Batman that we've seen in the movies, which we know it's technically geared to be him. We've seen the shot of him without the suit talking to Barry, but of course, it's now become a little bit of public knowledge that when he's wearing the suit, that is technically not Ben Affleck. It's supposed to be a stunt double, and they superimpose his face onto the cowl via post-production because it's Ben Affleck, they're resetting the DCU. He's kind of had it up to here with the way that he was handled, similarly to the way that Henry Cavill was treated. But to go through the trouble of actually muscling up, especially with his personal troubles, and then just the whole process of trying to get back into the cape and cowl, it was just such a process, such a chore, that he was just like, you know what, just superimpose my face onto a body doll or something. That's why the CG on his cowl looks just so iffy. It's the mustache for Henry Cavill all over again. And I feel like that, combined with the reset and also expiration of the license, made it quite clear that McFarlane just said, screw it, let's just make a very generic looking face sculpt for this version of Batman, and it comes through very clearly. It's simply just a case that, again, feeds into the very likely theory that McFarlane knew ahead of time that they were factory resetting, so to speak, the DCU, they're going in a different direction, Ben Affleck is out, that license was just not worth going through the trouble of renewing, making sure that they're borrowing the license, paying the fees, etc. So they just figured, alright, let's just throw out a generic looking sculpt out there, and that's pretty much what you're getting with the face. And for the most part, with the legalities in mind, I understand that. What I don't understand is still, even with all that taken into consideration, half-assing the actual paint jobs behind the lips, and most especially behind the eyes. Sure, the actual molding and the sculpting of the cowl is not too bad. It still resembles a little bit of that Justice League, or at least the Joss Whedon version of the Justice League, but nevertheless, it's still that classic Snyder Ben Affleck cowl. I just wish that they would have put in a little bit of effort, even if they're not going to retain 100% the likeness, some of the paint apps, especially, like I said, the eyes. It looks like he's blinded out, and if you're going to be doing that, then at least completely white out the eyes entirely to give him a much more comic accurate look, similar to that of the artwork on the back of the box. Instead, they kind of etch in a little bit of the pupils in there, but it's really not coming through because he's squinting so badly that it just looks like one giant smudge in there. And whether you take different photos, try to polish it up a little bit with the camera, or just witnessing it in hand, it just looks terribly. And as you kind of navigate down the suit, especially with this extra part, the cowl, you start to see how a lot of this figure just feels kind of piecemealed and Frankenstein together in a way where McFarlane just could not be bothered. I really was not exaggerating when I said that he really favored the Keaton Batman and put in all his efforts and energy into that particular buck, because here it just feels like just a thrown together Batman that has qualities of not only the Ben Affleck suit, specifically with the bat symbol here in the middle that resembles that girthier version of the symbol that is very akin to Zack Snyder's universe. As we kind of navigate throughout the utility belt, you see a little bit more of that characteristic, or at least that aesthetic, coming through with how very utility and military like that belt buckle is. Very different than the prior Batman that came before. But then you see all of this padding and straps and hexagonal shapes that, yeah, it's supposed to be a much more tactical take on Ben Affleck's suit that you're going to be seeing in the movie, but it's also completely grayed out without any paint apps or anything very distinguishable as far as details that really speak to the collector and speak to me as a collector of the McFarlane Batmans in a unique way. It just feels like a very straightforward Batman with this general gray all throughout. The tone of that gray kind of peers a little bit into the green hue with the gauntlets and a little bit in the boots, but overall it's just one straightforward color, and that's also a bit of a problem considering we taken accuracy into consideration, since we've seen clips of him in the movie wearing this suit and we know that it's pretty much blue in some areas. So to see an awful lot of that just be kind of thrown off to the side on top of the fact that the likeness is not there and so much of it just feels kind of thrown together, especially the way that the cowl and the rest of the shoulder area here is just kind of glued together in between the capes. It just feels like something that was just thrown in there and again, not given the proper consideration. And so it kind of makes certain people, and depending on the person, feel kind of an idiot for purchasing this guy, especially if they're going for a complete Batman collection. With all that said, I still can't bring myself to say that this is 100% a terrible, horrible figure. I feel like I've dealt with much more horrible quality control issues. I'll go as far as to say that I probably had even more frustrations with not necessarily Batman within this wave, but the Dark Knight trilogy wave as a whole when it comes to quality control and making sure that things are actually put together from a figure standpoint. And don't get me wrong, I don't own every single McFarlane toys out there, specifically Batman. There's actually some that I have yet to unbox that are part of the collection, but something tells me that I'm probably in for a very detrimental experience. As far as from an objective standpoint, there's areas about this figure that I really do like, and one of them is in fact a little bit of the sculpture happening around the torso area that does feel pretty good in hand, especially with the ab area here that has kind of like this pleathery look, and the rubber that they utilized here is pretty effective to kind of look very armorized. And then the plating as well, again, kind of accurate to the version we see on the screen in terms of appearance. Of course, color is an entirely different matter. As we kind of navigate the arms here and there, there's not a whole lot of bad stuff happening when it comes to sculpting and detail. It's just the paint apps that's completely inaccurate and frankly very, very much missing that is definitely going to make people that customize their figures very happy. But for somebody who wants to prioritize their time elsewhere, we kind of look at this and think to ourselves, maybe this could have been a very effective Batfleck figure, but at the same time, what was the point? Especially if you've been in the McFarlane Toys collection game long enough to know that they've already done this in full spades before. Yes, of course. I am talking about 2021, the Zack Snyder cut, Justice League Batfleck right here. And you can clearly tell that it's a night and day difference. Sure, the bat symbol is pretty similar, but everything else, you wouldn't even think to yourself, if it wasn't for the movies, that these were effectively the same exact Batman character, or at least the same portrayal of the Batman character. But you can see that when they really focus on what they can do, McFarlane Toys can really nail it, especially when it comes to a very photorealistic, in the 7-inch scale, head sculpt that resembles the actor. He's even got the little dimple in the middle of the butt chin, the lips, the little bit of puffiness around the cheeks that's very Ben Affleck. I mean, it's him. It's straightforward him. He is him. And then the rest of the detail on the padding and the armor of the tactical suit is just very beautiful. And I mentioned before that this is already one of my favorite Batman figures when it comes to McFarlane Toys, not only because of detail, articulation, and sculpting, but also just how well they were able to hone in on that likeness in this scale. So what the happened here? And again, I'm speaking rhetorically because we all know that it's due to the licensing issues, the controversy behind the Flash movie specifically with the whole Ezra Miller debacle, but also with the harsh reset of the DCU with James Gunn at the helm. And McFarlane probably saw it to just cut their costs, their losses, so to speak, and just put out this thing right here. Nevertheless, like I said, I can't bring myself to say that it's a complete travesty of a figure because, again, a little bit of the detail that they were able to etch in throughout the armor pieces is not too bad, but also with the articulation, which is really, really good, despite the fact that it's very likely favoring a hidden function with the figure so that to get you to buy an additional product, an additional vehicle, so to speak. And most of you already know what I'm talking about. But before I get to that, the head is able to fully rotate 360 on its joint, as well as being able to look slightly up and very much down, slightly tilt left to right. Arms are able to fully rotate 360 degrees vertically and are actually pretty loose on my joint, except not loose enough to just dangle kind of in the way and not feel very tight and snug within its joints, but also very flexible. And they can also extend to the sides very generously, even beyond the 180-degree angle, as you can see right about right there. And there's even a little bit of shrugging motion. I understand it's not necessarily a butterfly joint, but that washer inside does flex a little bit favorably towards that joint. As well as the biceps, though the guards on the shoulders, even though they're a little bit on the slimmer side, they're still made out of this rubber that kind of tucks away the bicep, but you are technically still able to fully rotate it there. Two joints at the elbow that are fully able to bend up, although mine's were a little bit on the rigid side. And the wrist joints that I really like do make a comeback here, that are kind of split down the middle, that allow the wrist to fully rotate 360 as well as bend inwards and outwards. Where I do feel like we received a bit of a compromise though is the torso, because even though it's able to extend towards the back to reveal the full-blown Ben Affleck abs right there in the middle, it doesn't really crunch towards the insides because of the way that this tab and this overall armor piece is designed right here in the middle of what would generally be the esophagus, but you are able to slightly crunch on the obliques side to side. As far as rotation, not much in the mid-torso joint. It kind of starts to snug up and tighten around the waist area, but it's actually lower right underneath the belt piece that you're able to rotate left to right, almost a full 360. I just start to feel like the diaper piece starts to kind of wiggle in place and dislodge itself. So I'm not going to do the full turn, but you are able to get much more mobility happening right there. Legs are able to move all the way up, actually pretty generously towards a high point right about right there. You'll see exactly why it is that it's able to do that, as well as being able to move towards the back a little bit more than the average McFarlane, but not too greatly. And very good extension towards the sides, provided that you're able to move like these buckle pieces that are just kind of dangling off the side diaper. I totally don't understand why it is that they're there, but they are there. And then you have two joints at the knees that are fully able to bend all the way up, though similar to the elbows, mine are quite rigid, so much so that I had to give it an extra pass with the hairdryer. And then much like the wrists, those ankle joints that I really do like, which are the ones split down the middle and flush better with the boot, are able to cut down the middle to allow the foot to move downwards and upwards pretty generously, as well as being able to rotate 360 down at the bottom as well as the top. Though similarly to the knees and the elbows, mine are also a little bit on the tough side, so do be careful when moving yours around. And then of course, no exception here, the toesies are back, though mine do feel like they could have been able to pivot a little more higher up, but they kind of stop right about that angle. So not too bad, but not the greatest I've seen as far as toe articulation, toe gait, so to speak. Now, I know what you're thinking. David, you skipped a very vital part of the articulation. Well, I really wanted to save that one for last because, again, it feeds into the hidden agenda, the hidden meaning behind the reason why we got a Batfleck figure in the first place, and that was to sell that goddamn bat cycle. Thigh swivels make a comeback to a McFarlane Toys Batman figure, and they could be found right here, right underneath the diaper, but above the plate that is here designed into the thighs. So you're able to rotate the legs in place. They're a little bit tight and snug, a little alarmingly, at least to mine right here. And it's cool that they're in there, but at the same time, if it's not for some kind of vehicle that is intended to be paired with a Batman figure, McFarlane doesn't do it. And I understand that it's probably some extra work, some extra design functions to fit into a figure. He probably looked at Batman and thought, or at least this version of Batman thought, well, he's going to be sporting a vehicle, or at least a bat cycle in the movie. Might as well toss that into here, and if things don't work out, then no harm, no foul. I almost want to cry that because this did lead to the return of the cloth cape, which is more or less the same cloth cape that we got with Keaton Batman. So they simply just recycled it and attached it to Batfleck here. But of course, it makes it much more comfortable for him to use the cloth cape and the thigh swivels to position Batfleck here upon that bat cycle much more effectively than without. And I understand that. I respect that. It's also the reason for why his only sole accessories are an extra pair of fisted hands to swap out for the currently holding hands that he is having on his wrist right now, so that he's able to clip on to the Batcycle's handlebars and ride like the wind. But again, I fear that this just kind of brings about 2 points that I constantly think about. One, why are thigh swivels not necessarily a standard issue? I know, again, it feeds into the cost, it feeds into extra work time to have some of these figures, but much like video games, it's fine. Go ahead and delay the figure as far as this leads to a much more quality figure where you get better paint apps on the faces, better sculpting on the suit, and then even better articulation where you could bump up the 22 points to 24 with added thigh swivels. Hell, maybe some extra legitimate butterfly joints right here that are able to take the entire shoulder and move it forwards and backwards, much like, dare say, Marvel Legends. And then keep the cloth capes as standard issue? I understand that that's probably going to skyrocket the price from a standard McFarlane from $20 to $25, but frankly, I would probably still pay it because at least I know that they're amplifying the value that you're getting for a McFarlane Toys figure. I just don't like that there has to be that catch, and that catch has to be that, if you really want them to have thigh swivels, and that means that the only reason for why this figure exists is so that we can sell at a secondary product, which in this case would be the Batcycle. And keeping that focus solely on that means that, look at this, we got fisted hands, awesome. Where's the Batarang? Where's the grapple? Where's at least an extra little thing to at least increase a little bit of the value here if it wasn't going to be for a legitimate good head sculpt that resembled the actor? I understand things were tight with the license, so come up with something secondary. Like I said, a Batarang. You did it with the Justice League Batman like before. He came in with the Batarang. It could have been thrown in here, but instead, the sole focus was on that Batcycle. And that is why it's incredibly difficult to not fault anyone for wanting to skip this guy and focus on tracking down that Keaton Batman. It's very similar to the way that McFarlane himself, Todd, focused on Keaton Batman, pouring all of his energy as far as design, function, and sculpt on him and the Batmobile, more so than the Ben Affleck or that Batcycle for that matter. I don't even feel compelled to want to pick that Batcycle up, considering that this is retroactively what we got for the actual portrayal of Batfleck. And sadly, we're still at a point where if you really want your quintessential Ben Affleck Batman in McFarlane Toys form, you're going to have to settle for this guy, which is not necessarily a bad McFarlane. I went on record to say that this is actually within my top 5, and I regretted not getting it sooner, but I feel like we're at a point where people really are going to be regretting not getting this guy much sooner because he is at a point where he is being scalped to no end. You're probably looking at about a cool $40 to $50 minimum for a guy like this. And as you can see right here, the duality of McFarlane Toys, how far we've come in just a matter of a couple of years. Nevertheless, I understand that some behind-the-scenes troubles more than likely factored into the creation of this supposed Batfleck. I just don't think that those licensing issues would have fed into something that would have stressed McFarlane to come up with different ways to at least make the figure worth picking up. Especially when you consider that some people like myself went through 2 Ben Affleck Batman figures from the Flash movie wave in order to make sure that this review happened. Yes, I actually got a prior version of this figure that came with a completely misassembled lower left leg. I had to go and return it. I had no choice but to go and return it back to Amazon, and thankfully they were very quick in sending me this replacement. But the fact that this happened just so close to the misassembly of the Bane Build-A-Figure and all those QC issues that were happening with the Dark Knight trilogy, McFarlane, please slow down and really consider what would the collector really want. You're a private company, and we're very thankful for the Batmobile at the price point you were able to deliver it at, as well as that Keaton. But hopefully moving forward, we can now get the Flash out of the way and focus on figures with the proper amount of time that they deserve. Right now, however, this alleged Batfleck figure is going to be deserving of a 5 out of 10 from me. Completely up to you if you want to pick them up should you see them in store or online, but if you are in the marketplace to getting this Batfleck figure because you, much like myself, are completing your entire McFarlane Batman collection, then there are going to be affiliate links that you can use in the description to pick them up at either Amazon or Entertainment Earth, and they help out the channel in the process. Either way, I appreciate you for watching all the way to the very end, and if by some chance you missed my review of the McFarlane Toys Flash movie Batmobile, then click on the end screen that's showing up on screen right now. Until next time, stay humble, I'll see you later.